He looked like everyone else. What if the guy next door, the one who waves hello, fixes his car on weekends and blends right in, was hiding a monster inside? A former classmate and student body president, Clarence Haynes, once said, "We agreed that if we had to pick 5 people in our class who would never, ever be accused as some type of mass murderer, Randy would be one of the 5. An honor student, a computer programmer, a Boy Scout, a debate team member. But have you ever wondered how someone so ordinary could snap?" On May 14, 1983, California Highway Patrol officers pulled over a swerving car on the 5 freeway in Mission Viejo around 1 a.m. They thought they were stopping a drunk driver. When they checked his vehicle, they saw a man slouched in the passenger seat with his genitals exposed and his pants pulled down. Upon further inspection, they saw strangulation marks on his neck and established that he was deceased. Kraft reportedly asked the officers, "How's my friend?" pertaining to the dead body. In the car, they found Polaroid prints of nude men who appeared unconscious or maybe even dead. Aside from those, there was also a piece of paper with 61 vague entries, which would end up being called Kraft's Scorecard. Convicted of 16 murders. Suspected of 67. Possibly more than 100. This is the chilling story of Randy Stephen Kraft, the Scorecard Killer. And trust me, once you hear it, you'll never look at a friendly stranger the same way again. Randy Stephen Kraft was born on March 19, 1945, in Long Beach, California. Born the youngest child of 4 and the only son of parents Opal and Harold Kraft, Randy Kraft grew up largely in the Orange County town of Midway City. When he was 3 years old, his family moved to Westminster, an ultra-conservative area of Orange County. High school classmates described him as somewhere right of Attila the Hun. He was a Boy Scout. He joined the debate team. He played tennis. He took accelerated classes. He was an honor student. By all appearances, Randy Kraft was a model teenager. But what if that perfect facade was just the beginning of something darker? After graduating from Westminster High School, Kraft attended Claremont Men's College. He graduated in 1968 with a BA in economics. During his time at Claremont, he voraciously supported the campaign of Barry Goldwater as well as support of the Vietnam War. But then things shifted. Have you noticed how one moment can change everything? Growing a beard and becoming swooned by the worldwide '68 protests, Kraft just as voraciously supported the efforts of Robert Kennedy. After college, he joined the U.S. Air Force and was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California. It was in the Air Force that Kraft made a life-changing decision. On July 26, 1969, Kraft received a general discharge from the Air Force after announcing his sexuality to his superiors. The discharge was officially listed as being on medical grounds. This was 1969, 2 years before the American Psychological Association declassified homosexuality as a mental illness. Coming out took courage. In response, Kraft sought legal advice from an attorney in an attempt to challenge the grounds regarding his discharge from the Air Force. The Air Force, however, refused to change the status of his discharge. Following his military discharge, Kraft moved back into his parents' home and worked as a bartender. And that's when the darkness began. What if one slip-up revealed the monster early, but no one stopped it? In March 1970, Randy Kraft's mask slipped. Kraft encountered a 13-year-old Westminster youth named Joseph Gerald Fancher at Huntington Beach. Fancher explained to Kraft that he had run away from home that day. Kraft showed him lewd pictures of men before raping him. Fancher then escaped, stumbling into a bar in Belmont Shore. Bloodied and addled, the child was rushed to the ER before he eventually led police back to Kraft's home. This should have been the end of Randy Kraft's freedom. Police found evidence. They had a victim. They had a suspect. But despite finding condemning evidence, the police conducted the search without a warrant. Most of the evidence was thrown out and Kraft walked away. A 13-year-old boy had been drugged and raped. And Randy Kraft faced no consequences. That failure by law enforcement would cost lives. Because Randy Kraft learned something important that day, he could get away with it. And that's the terrifying part. What happens when evil realizes it's untouchable? The murders began in September 1971. For the next 12 years, Randy Kraft hunted along California's freeways. His victims were young men, often hitchhikers, often military personnel from nearby Marine bases. He would offer them a ride, give them alcohol laced with sedatives, and then he would torture them. The details of what Kraft did to his victims are among the most disturbing in the history of serial murder. Strangulation, mutilation, sexual torture. Judge Donald A. McCartan noted that Kraft's extreme depravity, including jamming a swizzle stick up his victims, shocked even the judge's world-weary sensibilities. "I can't imagine doing these things in scientific experiments on a dead person, much less to someone alive," McCartan explained. During this time, Kraft lived what appeared to be a normal life. 7 years after his discharge, he had met Jeff Seelig, who worked as a baker, and the two were living together in a home in Laguna Hills. Kraft was working as a computer consultant, a job that often had him traveling to other states. His travels took him to Oregon and Michigan. Bodies started appearing in those states too. But no one connected the dots. Randy Kraft was smart, methodical, careful. He disposed of bodies in different locations. He varied his methods. He covered his tracks. And he kept a list. But have you ever wondered why some killers treat death like a game? Serial killers often keep trophies, photographs, jewelry, personal items from victims. Randy Kraft kept something different. He kept a scorecard. In his car, police found a piece of paper with 61 vague entries. Investigators suspect that these entries pertain to Kraft's victims. The entries were coded, cryptic, often just a few words, but investigators were able to decipher some of them. One entry read, Marine Head BP. Investigators believe this referred to Mark Marsh, a Marine who was found decapitated in Buena Park. Another entry, Golden Sails. This referred to Craig Gennades, whose body was found in the parking lot of the Golden Sails Hotel. Entry after entry, victim after victim, documented like a ledger. Some entries appear to reference double murders, 2 victims killed at the same time. Investigators eventually connected 43 entries to actual victims. But there were 61 entries total. And some investigators believe the real number of victims could be even higher. The scorecard wasn't just a record, it was a trophy. Proof of what he'd done. And Randy Kraft kept it with him. In his car. Where police would eventually find it. Imagine carrying your darkest secrets right where anyone could stumble upon them. What was he thinking? May 14, 1983. Around 1 a.m. Randy Kraft was driving on a stretch of freeway in Mission Viejo when California Highway Patrol officers noticed him swerving. This caused them to suspect a drunk driver and Kraft was asked to pull over. When Kraft exited his vehicle, the patrolman saw that his zipper was down and he reeked of alcohol. They performed a sobriety test, which Kraft failed. The officers approached his car. Inside, they saw a man slouched in the passenger seat with his genitals exposed and his pants pulled down. Upon further inspection, the patrolman saw strangulation marks on his neck and established that he was deceased. Kraft reportedly asked the officers, "How's my friend?" pertaining to the dead body. He was arrested on the scene. The man found dead in Kraft's car was identified as a Marine named Terry Lee Gambrell. According to Gambrell's friends, the last time they saw him alive was when he was planning to hitchhike on his way to a party. It was then that Kraft picked him up and gave him a bottle of beer spiked with sedatives. Terry Gambrell was 25 years old. He was a Marine corporal. He'd accepted a ride from what seemed like a friendly stranger. And he died for it. Upon his arrest, the patrolman searched Kraft's vehicle thoroughly. In it, they found Polaroid prints of nude men who appeared unconscious or maybe even dead. Aside from those, there was also a piece of paper with 61 vague entries, and that would end up being called Kraft's scorecard. Police then searched Kraft's apartment in Long Beach. What they found was overwhelming. Photographs of victims. Personal belongings taken from victims. Fibers from Kraft's carpet matched fibers found at crime scenes. His fingerprints were on glass shards found at a murder scene. 5 years into his killing spree, Orange County deputies had responded to a remote area in Silverado Canyon where they found a murdered young man. Forensic scientists reconstructed a vodka bottle found at the scene and collected fingerprints. Fingerprints that were later matched to Randy Kraft after his 1983 arrest. The evidence was overwhelming. Randy Kraft had finally been caught. But what if the system had caught him sooner? How many lives could have been saved? On May 16, 1983, Kraft was formally charged with the murder of Gambrell. But investigators knew this was just the beginning. By September 8, investigators had interviewed over 700 witnesses and had gathered more than 250 physical exhibits which pointed towards Kraft's guilt in a further 15 homicides committed between December 1972 and February 1983. The scorecard became the investigative roadmap. Detectives worked to decode each entry, match victims to locations, connect evidence to crimes. They discovered that Kraft's job as a computer consultant had taken him across state lines. Murders in Oregon matched his travel records. Murders in Michigan coincided with his business trips. Gas station receipts placed him in locations where victims were last seen. Work records confirmed his presence in cities where bodies were found. The case against Randy Kraft wasn't just strong. It was airtight. The trial began on September 26, 1988. Judge Donald A. McCartan oversaw the trial in Orange County. The trial lasted a total of 13 months and would prove to be the most expensive trial in Orange County history. Defense attorneys C. Thomas McDonald, James Merwin, and William Copany spent close to $5.5 million on investigators and experts. In total, the prosecution called nearly 160 witnesses to testify. Over 1,000 exhibits were introduced as evidence. The evidence against Kraft was staggering. Bloodstains in his car. Hair and fiber evidence from his home. Fingerprints at crime scenes. Photographs of victims found hidden in his vehicle. Personal belongings from victims found in his possession. The defense strategy was simple. Claim it was all circumstantial. Suggest alternate suspects. portray Kraft as an upstanding member of society. During his jury trial, Kraft did not testify on his behalf. After the trial court judge refused to grant his request to testify about only one of the murder charges he was facing, he opted, based on the advice of his attorneys, not to take the stand to defend himself. On April 29, 1989, each side opened their closing arguments, which lasted a total of 3 days, the prosecution again listing all the physical and circumstantial evidence pointing to Kraft's guilt, the defense arguing as to the circumstantial case put forward by the prosecution that all the murders were linked and accusing the prosecution of glossing over the truth. Following the closing arguments, the jury deliberated for 11 days before reaching their verdict. Jury Foreman Lytle says he found it hard to listen to testimony about rape and sexual mutilation. I think that's why they only had 2 men on the jury, he says. On May 12, 1989, Kraft was found guilty of 16 counts of murder, 1 count of sodomy and 1 count of emasculation. On 1 additional count of sodomy in relation to victim Roger DeVole, Kraft was found not guilty. Then came the penalty phase. The prosecution introduced evidence of several additional homicides committed in both Oregon and Michigan, which they were certain Kraft had also committed and for which he had not been tried in Orange County. The defense introduced testimony relating to a PET scan conducted on Kraft which, they asserted, revealed abnormalities in the frontal lobes of his brain, therefore reducing his ability to control both his emotions and impulse. The prosecution rebuffed this testimony by stating to the jury, "There is nothing wrong with Mr. Kraft's mind other than that he likes killing for sexual satisfaction," adding that the fact his family and friends had found it difficult to believe he had committed any murders simply showed what a good salesman he is. On August 11, 1989, the jury rendered a verdict of death. When the verdict was announced, one victim's father screamed, "Burn in hell, Kraft," as the defendant was led from the courtroom. Justice served? Or just the start of more questions? Randy Kraft was sentenced to death on November 29, 1989. That was over 35 years ago. For nearly 30 years Randy Kraft has sat on California's death row attempting to clear his name. In the summer of 2000, with Kraft's appeals of his verdict in state court exhausted, the California Supreme Court upheld his conviction and death sentence. He remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison. In 2013, the local magazine Orange Coast ran a story titled, "Why Isn't Randy Kraft Dead?" and quoted several of the jurors who convicted Kraft expressing disbelief that he has yet to be executed. Max Gambrill, a cousin of Terry Gambrill who grew up next door to him in Indiana, expressed mixed emotions about Kraft, saying that while he has thought about killing him himself, he is also glad he remains behind bars. To this day, Randy Kraft maintains his innocence. In 2017, Kraft, then 71, contacted the Bay Area Reporter about his desire to publicly discuss his case before he dies. "This has been bottled up so long," a graying Kraft said during an interview. "I'm getting older. I'm going to die here. And I am frustrated my attorneys aren't saying these things. If I don't say something it will never be said." As he recalled telling one of his former attorneys who asked what he would do if his conviction was overturned, Kraft replied, "My life is here now. Almost all of the people I care for are here. I don't have any former life to return to, it is obliterated. I don't pine for release, my life is here. I'll die here and that's okay with me." Investigators continue to work on the Kraft case. New technology, DNA analysis, genetic genealogy. They're still identifying victims. In November 2023, an Iowa teenager who had been known simply as John Doe for 49 years was identified as Michael Ray Schlicht of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He was believed to be one of Kraft's earliest victims. For nearly 5 decades, his family didn't know what happened to him. Now they do. The scorecard keeps giving up its secrets. Victims keep getting their names back. Young men who were sons, brothers, friends, who accepted rides from a stranger and never came home. But why does this story still haunt us today? Randy Kraft is one of California's most prolific serial killers. Yet he remains largely unknown outside of true crime circles. Why? Perhaps because his victims were young men, often gay or presumed to be gay, at a time when society didn't care as much. Perhaps because he was himself, and his case didn't fit the media narrative. Perhaps because his crimes were so depraved that they're difficult to discuss. But the bigger question remains. Why did Randy Kraft kill? He's never confessed, never explained, never shown remorse. Psychologists and criminologists have studied his case. But Kraft himself has offered no answers. What we know is this. For 12 years, Randy Kraft hunted young men along California's freeways. He tortured them. He killed them. And he kept a scorecard. Like it was a game. A former classmate and student body president, Clarence Haynes, said, "We agreed that if we had to pick 5 people in our class who would never, ever be accused as some type of mass murderer, Randy would be one of the 5. Randy Kraft looked like everyone else. He was educated, employed, articulate. And that's what made him so dangerous. 16 proven murders. 67 suspected. Possibly 100 or more. The Scorecard Killer. still on death row, still maintaining his innocence, and still refusing to tell us why. What do you think, innocent or guilty? Share your thoughts below and spread this story if it chilled you to the core.